Hi, Scott Quimby from CSI. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are fortunate to have Vince from Cisco on with us. And one thing Cisco is quite adept at is over time figuring out funding and funding mechanics and trying to make sense of these things to try to better position you as to how do I pay for all this stuff. And he's put together a presentation on the Cybersecurity Pilot Program, which is on a short timeline. Um, and so I'm going to kick it over to him, and he's going to take you through what they know about the program and details and the like, and we will go from there. So good morning, Vince, and it's all yours.
Wonderful. I appreciate it, Scott, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for the warm intro, Scott. Again, Vince Siragusa here. I sit on the Cisco Public Funding Team, and to Scott's point, in a nutshell, I work to digest the funding streams at the federal and state level that impact our many customers and many organizations. So for New York, obviously, Smart School Bond, looking at Acture recently with the stimulus money, E-rate itself, some of the title funding that might come on, some of the school safety programs that might be out there. So I appreciate the opportunity to address what is relatively new, actually very new overall, with the passage of this $200 million pilot program from the FCC. A lot of this information is basically available this week, and more details to be released here in the next few weeks. But we're really having a discussion at a great time. My goal is to reinforce a lot of what USAC through the FCC, who administers this program, what they've released. There's likely going to be some questions over time. Very much so. We are monitoring the funding landscape in general, but this program in particular. So if something's not addressed today or not addressed on an FAQ page from USAC, consider, obviously everybody on the call very much an eager resource to enlighten and plug the gap and fill some of the details. So a lot of what I cover, basically is referencing what the FCC has released with this new program, and it finally is beginning to get fleshed out to the point of taking action. And we're fortunate to be working with a dedicated funding stream looking strictly at network security. Historically and at a holistic level, there's been very few programs fundamentally designed for network safety or network security, I should say. There's carve-outs with some Homeland Security money, and certainly through stimulus, there's been some money for state and local governments. But here's really the first time we're looking at a program dedicated to K through 12 schools and libraries that really piggybacks on the success of E-rate through many decades now, and really approaches a topic and a need and security posture in general that, again, historically has had the attention, but not the dollar signs backing. And I think this is a really good indication, and I'll reinforce this many ways, that the FCC is serious about tackling this topic. And fundamentally, $200 million nationwide is not enough. Drop in the bucket in terms of what folks are dealing with every day, but a good indication and a good start that I think will set the foundation for a lot more dollar signs, and if not this program, that similar program over time that we all need to benefit from and need to participate in as much as capacity and need allow. So at high level, looking at the program itself, what is the Cybersecurity Pilot Program? So through the FCC, also administering E-rate, you'll see some parallels here, but fundamentally, this is not E-rate. It's an entirely different funding stream that takes, again, piggybacks on some of the process involved with E-rate, but is entirely separate, separately funded, separately administered. And while dovetailing to some extent is not E-rate itself. So $200 million pilot program over 3 years to help schools and libraries enhance cybersecurity. That's the mission. Eligibility, similar to E-rate, K through 12 schools and libraries, all intended to participate or invited to participate. E-rate success or participation previously is not required. So again, entirely separate, and with E-rate success comes some streamline access to Epic. A lot of existing information will transfer over into this new portal, but again, E-rate is not a prerequisite to participate. And when we're looking at allocations similar to E-rate, there are per pupil allocations, which is $13.60 per student per year. But the program does allow over that 3-year period to basically apply in year one the allocation for year 1, year 2, and year 3. So effectively, $40.80 per student over the 3-year term, the 3-year program that can be applied for in year 1. So if you want a piecemeal, you can, but the program allows for basically, again, applying up front that full $40 and change per student, which comes to a floor of about $45K per school district and library. So the higher the student population, obviously that multiplier goes up a little bit. But this is $200 million across the board, the 3 years, and until it's supplemented, again, relatively finite. But there are many reasons, aside even from the dollar signs, why I think it's really important. Any school and library that has this need understands the program and as much as you have the capacity to participates in the program, at least up front. And I'll get into really what the what the FCC is looking for at this point. So looking at the performance goals, really at a high level, what the administrators of the program are looking to do. Obviously, enhance cybersecurity is fundamentally what it's designed for. And very much so using the term piggybacking again, if we look at E-rate as establishing the network within the schools, the next step obviously is dovetailing in with the security aspect that E-rate has, not really. I mean, they certainly have considered, but not invested in historically. And if you work with E-rate, basically basic firewall is eligible, and anything more robust in terms of advanced services really doesn't work with E-rate. So where there is an opportunity to couple the two programs, where maybe your basic firewall comes with E-rate and the advanced licenses come with this program, that works. But anything that is E-rate eligible does not work with this program, and vice versa. So enhancing security is the number one priority or goal. Measuring costs. So they are at the FCC looking at a return on this investment. So in terms of the dollar signs invested, what are they getting back, or what are we getting back, I should say, from an applicant standpoint, in terms of benefits realized and how the services and solutions have positively impacted the network and the school in general. And then leveraging federal resources where there's an opportunity with other programs, whether they exist today or down the line, and how that all comes together to really make for, again, a holistic representation of cybersecurity posture and impacting the security of the network in a positive way. So they are at the FCC really evaluating the effectiveness of this program. They will take a look at the demand of this program, and all signs point to a lot more need than what the $200 million will allow. But again, with a lot of people applying and a lot of people really having a good vision around what they need when it comes to security, I think the goal at the end of the day is USAC to understand that demand, digest that demand, and determine some way or another whether to fund this on a permanent basis, whether it's this program or a very similar program. So the name of the game is, as many folks as possible participating, I think, is really what the program needs to see at the end of the day. Now, when it comes to the program proper, so obviously we have kind of the overarching goals. When it comes to selection criteria, they have, represented at a high level really who they're looking to work with and why to some extent. So needy schools and libraries, with priority given to the schools, libraries, and consortia that are in most need of cybersecurity, especially those with higher discount rates. So with category 1, with traditional E-rate, and category 2, obviously there's a discount rate or basically the percentage that the federal government will invest to support the project, and the remaining percentage effectively is a co-share or co-match or matching contribution locally. So based on category 1 discount rates, that's what they're going to use to basically determine those in highest economic need. So the higher your discount rate is for category 1 and then corresponding to category 2, those generally speaking, I think, are the folks that are going to get first consideration when it comes to this money. But that's not the only goal, and that's not the only metric that the FCC is considering. So needy schools in terms of a programmatic need, economic need, but at the same time, the goal at the federal level is to support as many eligible schools, consortia, libraries as possible. Tribal consideration will come into play, as well as diverse representation. So they really are looking in as much as they can for equitable distribution of this money, rural and urban alike, city schools, small schools, large schools. But again, emphasis is the term they're using on funding proposed pilot projects that include low income and, when applicable, tribal applications. So it'll be interesting to see how the discount rate factors in. If anybody north with category 2 of 85% discount rate is really the first to be considered, or if they work down that list. We don't really know yet, because obviously we don't know what the volume of applications look like. But important to reinforce, the FCC doesn't seem to necessarily say this is the type of school district or building we want to work with. They are looking, in terms of a diverse representation of not only applicants but awardees. So I can't think of too many scenarios where it doesn't make sense to throw your name in the hat and participate, if only to indicate again the demand is out there, and whatever 2.0 version of this program is presented. Certainly you would think would have more money, and through more money, more investment nationwide into the topic at hand. So looking at the logistical process, we will see a lot of parallels to E-rate, but again, fundamentally different, and at least the first couple steps are dissimilar from what we've seen with E-rate in the past. So we're looking at a part 1 and part 2 now to really kind of kickstart the process. So they split the application, which is a new form 484, into 2 parts to basically break down and simplify this process in general. So part 1 of that form is basic information on who you are, general levels of cybersecurity information and readiness, a description of what the project looks like. A lot of the areas populated are auto-filled just based on if you are an existing E-rate participant. It carries over into the Epic portal, and a lot of yes or no, kind of check the box answers. So they've done a really good job. I've got some links as well. The FCC's done a good job of kind of coaching what the questions look like and how to answer. So that resource exists, but it is basically, very high level and not terribly exhaustive in terms of the questions being asked and how to answer them. But based on intaking those part 1 applications, the FCC will digest, they will review, and then they will select who they want to participate in the program. So it's kind of odd in that basically you apply to be considered, and then if selected, you enter a part 2 component of the form 484 and get a little bit more detailed, a little bit more granular in your answers and how to address past cybersecurity experience, and more details on the budget, what you're looking to do, etc. So in short, you don't get to that part 2 unless you obviously apply in part 1 and are selected to participate in the program itself. And this is another way to reinforce the part 1, part 2. So general information up front, and if selected, a little bit more detailed look for just those selected applicants. So in both scenarios, it is, I won't say it's high level necessarily, but it's not a deep dive into into questions that you probably don't have a very or fairly easy answer to to respond with. Again, looking like E-rate in terms of some of the forms, but the goal obviously is to be selected to get to that part 2. And then once you get to that part 2, then there is, similar to E-rate, a more traditional form 470. So effectively your RFP, you'll get bids and responses from the the vendor community. You'll pin down your solution through the form 471, similar to E-rate, and then work on reimbursement, whatever form or fashion that makes sense for the project, whether bare method or SPI method, depending on who's getting made whole at the end of the day. So again, the goal is to participate in the part 1, and hopefully as many folks as possible get selected, and along with that volume, again, hopefully comes the next version of the program, which is all intents and purposes point to much more robust and hopefully, more dollar signs nationally. Eligible services, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. They, similar to E-rate, produce an eligible service list, and it intends to be broad. It intends to be all encompassing. This is not a, if it's not on this list, it doesn't work. It's not the type of scenario that they're supporting. So if you don't see something bulleted under the 4 eligible product categories, chances are, if you can justify it as part of your network experience and network security experience, it's going to work. So won't call out any particular bullets, but looking at the categories themselves: advanced and next gen firewalls, leading into endpoint protection, identity protection and authentication, and then finally monitoring, detection, and response. My understanding is if you have needs that might fall into independent categories out of these 4, no holds barred there. That shouldn't be an issue. This is basically kind of a selection of drop downs and categories that will come into play when you obviously get again to part 2 of the Form 484 and beyond. So they've done a pretty good job of releasing this, and again, pretty holistic and open-ended bullets in terms of the solutions that make sense under the program. Ineligible costs, we won't spend a lot of time here, but this is not a physical security program. Overtly, they call out security cameras as not being eligible. This is not a staffing program per se. This is not a consultation program per se. Installation, console, et cetera, around installation of the or deployment of the project is eligible. But really, the intent is under, again, those 4 previous categories. That's really where success will be found as an applicant, and where the investment from the FCC will be placed in terms of the the solutions and and products that align there. Looking at the window, so this is kind of a work in progress. Obviously, as things are updated and change, we'll get a little bit updated clarity on the timeline. But that part 1, aiming to allow the FCC to select who is participating, is open now through November 1st. So that is done in the Epic portal. My assumption is, if you've worked with a traditional E-rate consultant, they are well plugged into this program. My assumption as well is that BOCES are also monitoring this program, and I haven't seen anything published in terms of BOCES consultation, but I'm sure resources exist as well, some of the E-rate, that are digesting and helping folks position themselves to be successful under this program. But that has to be done by November 1st for that part 1 process. And again, that's going to drive awareness of demand, and that's going to be the list of groups and projects that the FCC will work with the selection leading to, again, part 2. So once that's done, part 2 happens. Final participants are selected, and then through again, similar to E-rate, the 470, leading to 28-day window, waiting evaluation in terms of bids coming in, selecting your bids, buying the 471, and then moving with deployment. So there's a lot to do, or a lot of volume, I guess, in terms of applications before November 1st. But again, that part 1 process does not look to be terribly intrusive or overwhelming in terms of what information the FCC is gathering. And we've got some resources on the bottom as well if anybody wants to reference or circle back on anything that the FCC has produced in the past. In terms of readiness, again, if you have participated in E-rate in the past, that's good in that a lot of your registration, your access, your BEN number, et cetera, is already fleshed out. If that's not the case, if you're new to E-rate or haven't participated, I would suggest, at least that the top paragraph there, get your FCC registration number, your build entity number, and all these linked to, the process to effectively check that box. And then below that, resources around the pilot program website, the eligible service list that we just hit on it very quickly, and additional information on the program as well. And second from the bottom, there's an email list as well that you can sign up for. So we've seen a lot of activity the last couple of days, through that list, simply because this is really being fleshed out as we speak now. A lot of this is net new information within the last 2 or 3 days. So we're optimistic more information will follow. They have a pretty robust frequently asked question page. If anything is not answered either on these slides or through whatever resource you might be looking at, whether FCC or something else. Lisa, Scott, and team here, we're obviously monitoring this program and looking to point any question to the the viable answer that exists as we sit today, or a week from now, whenever it might be. So so in a nutshell, I think important again. I the FCC is looking at this in as a pilot program name would suggest. They're really looking to see again what the demand is for this. E-rate with its success over many years obviously is a pretty robust and mature mechanism of support. I think the goal is to mirror the success with E-rate and then basically figure out a similar funding mechanism long term to increase security posture and address the many threats that are out there. So if there is any opportunity to participate, ideally, obviously, everybody wants the money, in terms of return on that investment. But at the end of the day, like the more hands being raised saying, hey, we need this support, we'll inform the FCC and we'll see, if not this program, something very similar over time that addresses the topic and invests in what, needless to say, is a sensitive and necessary topic to invest in when it comes to security needs. So I will share these slides. As any questions pop up, again, are eager to dig deeper. I think it's a good idea as an applicant to know, if not every part number and line number, to at least have a rough figure dollar wise around, ideally what you need within the context of the allocation. Again, $40 and change per student over 3 years. So there are going to be some budgetary areas where knowing what the costs look like are important up front. Obviously, that leads eventually to the Form 470 and getting really more details, around each line item and part number. But having a notion of what you're addressing and what it costs up front, I think, is going to be important when it comes to the initial part one and part two of the Form 484. So if there are any questions, certainly we can, look to address today. But otherwise, Scott or Lisa, I don't know if you have any other insight or details. Again, I'll share the slides and look forward to convening as necessary if there's any questions on this program or any other program, whether it deals with some might be some ESSER money still out there. We've got the school violence prevention program that should be opening in the next few months around physical security, and some other competitive grants that might resonate within your environment in terms of your partnership or programmatic endeavors as we sit now or even down the line. So as I mentioned a few times, eager to be a resource and help point collectively to where some of the alternative funding dollars might sit.
Okay. If anyone has questions, I don't see anything in the chat. Now is the time. Lisa did record this, so if there's anyone else you want to see this, that recording should be available probably later this afternoon. Lisa will also share out Vince's slides. So I think with that, kind of short and sweet on this one, and I still don't see any questions. So I think, thank you, Vince, for that. That was a good summary. I realize it's a pretty fluid topic, it sounds like, in terms of timelines and getting geared up, but we got to start someplace. So with that, I think, thank you guys for attending. Thank you, Vince, for sharing your knowledge as always. And we're available if you have questions or follow up. And have a wonderful day. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks all.